Baker Show.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. It is the time for another Kev Baker Show right here on Truth Frequency Radio, www.tfrlive.com. And if you can do one big massive favour for me and the rest of the people at this brilliant network, it would be to go and share that far and wide on all social media platforms. I know social media is more akin to anti-social media these days, but if we can spread the word about TFR, just maybe we can swell our ranks and wake so many people up along the way. And I think tonight's show is going to be an absolutely brilliant 2 hours of radio, and it's going to be so thought-provoking. It's going to touch on some of the stuff that we like to talk about a lot here on the Kev Baker Show, on so many other shows across the network, and Freaky Friday as well. And we're going to be getting into something that we're calling the collective unconscious. So before we get there, let me just introduce my co-host, Jimmy Jeans. He's here tonight. Jimmy, locked and loaded for another brilliant episode ahead. And I know you're really looking forward to this tonight. I shared some of the source material that tonight's guest provided me with. And yeah, man, this is going to be good, right?
I know. I can't wait. I've been waiting all week. I'm super excited. Man, the energy is just the static, the electricity going on here in the studio is really, it's electrifying.
It really is. And of course, tomorrow night, ladies and gentlemen, in hour 2 of the Kev Baker Show, Gerald Salenti will be joining me, and we'll be taking a look ahead to what trends we can look out for in 2019. I can't believe we're almost at the end of the year already. But let's waste no more time. Let's get into it, shall we? And tonight's guest is a returning guest. I couldn't believe it today when I found out it was all of 7 months, at least, since I've last spoken to this brilliant guy. And who is it I'm talking about? Well, his name is Bernie Taylor. And he's an independent naturalist, thought leader, and author whose research explores the mythological connections and biological knowledge among prehistoric, indigenous, and ancient peoples. Now, his work in the areas include biological time, that's back in 2004, and Before Orion, Finding the Face of the Hero. Now, this is something that we spoke about when Bernie was first on the show. And Before Orion is premised on Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey monomyth that is at the core of stories worldwide among indigenous peoples and the ancients and our modern society today. Now, Before Orion explores a deeper root for this monomyth by looking at how hunter-gatherers viewed themselves within the natural and spiritual worlds through Paleolithic cave art from 40,000 years ago. Now, Taylor proposes that select cave paintings are fundamental pieces in the human journey to self-realization, the foundation of written language, and even a record of biological knowledge that irrevocably impacted some of the artistic styles, religious practices, and stories that are still with us today. Bernie addresses a profound archaeological elephant in the room by opening up an uncharted place in our history, which points to the cultural ancestors of mankind in Western North Africa. Before Orion will change the idea of who you think you are. So without any further ado, Bernie, welcome back to the show, man.
Kev, thanks for having me on, and brother Jimmy, appreciate it.
No, and I have to, before we get into this, may I just thank you profusely for making the introduction between myself and Dr. Brian Keating. That has got to be one of my highlights in the whole time that I've been doing radio here at TFR. And it was all thanks to an introduction that you made. So I can't thank you enough for that. And I'm equally looking forward to what we're going to be getting into tonight, Bernie.
Absolutely. This is going to be electrifying. We're going to go deep into mankind's consciousness. It's going to be a place we've all gone before, but we've never realized that we're there.
Absolutely. And like I was saying to you, consciousness, it's something that is really at the forefront of a lot of the stuff we talk about here on the show today, and even in science, with the mapping of the brain, with the progress that's been made in artificial intelligence. Consciousness is very rarely away from the kind of talking points that the main scientists, the biggest scientists in the world, when they're working today, this is one of the biggest questions that they are trying to answer right now. And tonight we're going to look back in time, aren't we? And we're going to look at, just what is consciousness? Where does it come from? And what really set you down this path into looking into consciousness, Bernie?
Well, from my perspective on consciousness is looking into the unconscious, the symbols, the archetypes that are deep within ourselves, both collectively as a civilization and personally as individuals. And this goes back to the work of the Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung. And Carl Jung believed that there was this collective unconscious. And as he defined it, it's the universal repository of human beliefs, knowledge, patterns, and experiences that has not come to conscious awareness. These memories somehow pass from us from one mystery to another. And so on your program, people talk about pyramids and mountains and Maya temples and all these things. They're talking about these common symbols that are around the world. And there's people who say, well, the aliens must have given it to us, or the Anunnaki somehow flew around the world, or, people DMT trip on the ayahuasca, carried it, between South America and Europe. There's all these ideas out there. But today we're going to explore it from another perspective. We're going to look at through depth psychology, the work of Carl Jung. We're going to take it back to 34,000 years ago in the Paleolithic cave of art, and we're going to bring it to the present in what we know today. This would be a good time, Jimmy, to play our song.
Jimmy Jeans. Now, we're going to play a song here. This is something different for the Kev Baker Show, but it's very, very relevant to the kind of source the conversation that we're going to have tonight. And Jimmy, we've queued up a Billy Joel song, haven't we? Yeah, so that was Billy Joel, and I love that song. I remember that song when I was growing up. Definitely a good song, and little did I know that it would be key to the subject material tonight. So how does this fit in with everything we're talking about tonight, Bernie?
Well, Billy Joel wakes up one morning from a dream, and he has this song in his head. And he tries to shake it loose because he's not a spiritual man. He's the secular piano man. So Billy Joel goes into the shower, and the water's pounding on his head, and he just can't get rid of the song. He sits down and he starts writing about it, and he just flushes out the whole song. Now, put this in perspective. This is the time he's married to Christy Brinkley. Everybody remembers Christy Brinkley, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So he's married to Christy Brinkley. He wakes up. He's not thinking about Christy. He's thinking about this song that he can't shake from his head. And what really bothered Billy was that it's a religious song. It's a spiritual song. And he doesn't want to be converted. He doesn't want to go down that road. In this song, he talks about mountains of faith and a river so deep and the valley of fear. And he says, I'm not going to do this song. But he does eventually do it. And it becomes one of his top hits, and certainly the top hits for that year. And Billy Joel, a few years later, he's doing an interview, and they ask him, what's the song about? He says, it's a spiritual song. I have no idea. And so today, we're going to go into the mind of Billy Joel. We're going to go into the Paleolithic mind from which Billy Joel inherited. And we're going to find the meaning to the River of Dreams. Are you ready, guys?
Oh, absolutely. And, just on that kind of note, I've always wondered why it is, Bernie, that ever since I first clapped eyes on the pyramids in Egypt at a very, very young age, I found them mesmerizing. And I often say it's almost like I used to say maybe I've got a past life that takes me back to Egypt, something like that. And that's maybe just my best way of trying to explain something that I couldn't quite put my finger on. But I think as tonight's show goes on, I think I might appreciate just why it is I found the pyramids. And so many people around the world that tune into this show and further afield, they all feel drawn to Egypt for some reason.
I can look out my window right now, and beyond the clouds, I can see Mount Hood. It's a pyramidal, it's a conical shape. And that's all mountains. And where we don't have mountains, we make them. And of course, the Giza Plateau it's just flat. They created mountains, all those pyramids. People go to Giza and they walk away and they say, I had this just mystical experience. But people have that same mystical experience. They look at Mount Hood in my background. The Olympians stood on Mount Olympus. In Australia, that cosmic mountain is Meru. It's around the world, people are drawn to these mountains. And when we don't have them, we make them. And so Carl Jung asked that same question. He asked, deep in the minds of man, we're drawn to these mountains, these cosmic mountains that the apprentice climbs, the hero climbs. And that, if you take an art class, you're going to probably sit down and draw an image of, if it's a landscape, you're going to draw a mountain in the background and some body of water in the foreground. And in the dreams of mankind, those are the two most common symbols, the body of water and the mountain. So what you're doing is you're going into the collective unconscious, the memories that came before you. And for some reason, we carry these forward with us and we can't escape from them. Jimmy, what mountains have you been drawn to?
Mount Shasta.
Cosmic mountain among the Native Americans there.
I know. And there are so many tales of entrances into caverns that are supposedly going all the way over to the pyramids. I've heard these stories. There's been so many tales, so many magical experiences. Just being at the foot of that mountain is literally an electrifying experience.
And metaphorically, you're talking about the caves that go into the mountain.
Yes, sir. The caves.
So that's what the Paleolithic caves. This one I do at El Castillo. It's a mountain, a pyramidal-shaped mountain that the caves go into in the same way as the caves go into under the Giza pyramids. It's the same story.
Wow.
That we carry within us. We can't escape for it. And we can go around the world and all the gods sit on top of the mountains. For the people in the greater region of Everest, the gods sat on top of the mountain.
And even, we got a lot of Christian listeners here as well. And Moses, he went up the mountain, didn't he?
Moses was Mount Sinai. Jesus was transfigured on Mount Tabor.
Wow.
Noah lands on top of a mountain, right? Okay, the ship lands on top of a mountain. Abraham goes up to the top of the mountain to speak to God. And is it Isaiah who goes to sacrifice his son on top of the mountain? We can't escape this mountain. And among the Islamic tradition, Muhammad goes to the mountain. And there's, of course, that allegory we have about that. And Hercules climbs Mount Atlas, which is we now call Geopolitics, which is in western North Africa. It's the tallest mountain. So we're drawn to these tall mountains. So Billy Joel, he's drawn to those mountains. He calls them the mountains of faith. Now, going back to Billy had that interview a few years later. He didn't see it that way. He couldn't explain the dream he had. It just came forth from him. He had to sing the song.
So that begs the question then, where did that inspiration come from? Just what was Billy Joel tapping into, or what prompted Billy Joel to go there?
Well, that's this collective unconscious. And we're going to explore how we get there. But there's another motif he has in the same song. Billy goes to the river, and the river is wide and too hard to cross. In metaphorically, traditions around the world, the other side of the river is death. So the Greeks crossed the river Styx to the place on the other side, which is death. And some Native American traditions, they crossed the river, which symbolized the Milky, which symbolized the river, and the other side was death. And there's, of course, the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner that he travels through the night, it travels through death itself. Now we have the sun god Ra travels on a boat through the day and the night among the ancient Egyptians. He's traveled from life to death. So Billy Joel has these motifs in him, but Billy Joel says it's too hard to cross. I'm afraid. I had a friend a few years ago who passed away. And a common friend of ours called me up one morning and said, our fishing friend has crossed is now fishing the other side of the stream. And I never knew never knew this motif, but I understood in that moment, in that time, that our common friend had passed on.
That's a fishing. Nice, yeah, that's a nice way of putting it, isn't it? Our friends fishing from the other side now. I can really picture that in my mind. What you're really getting at now, Bernie.
Oh yeah, totally. So Billy Joe, every night he says he has the same dream. It's pounding on him. He goes down to the river. It's too hard to cross. And at the end of the song, Billy says, "I just can't do it. I'm not ready to go there." So what Billy's not ready to do, he's not ready to enter what we call the spiritual world, this unconscious world. What is not measurable? What is not mechanical? He's not ready to go there. But he's not ready to. He doesn't want to sing the song either. And in the song we have now some African American singers doing their thing in the background and the swaying. Remember the hands up? I said you got to do that when you listen to the song. And that's Billy talking about this. He has all these motifs, and he talks about the jungle of doubt, and he's not a spiritual man, and the desert of truth. He has all these images that are floating around in his head. And Billy Joel was a picture thinker. He thought in colors and in images. So these are not words that came to him. These are images that were brought forth from somewhere in his collective unconscious. And so there's all these rivers throughout the world we have to cross. So the question now becomes, where does this come from, and how do we carry it within us? And Jimmy, there's a question. Let's see what's one question or one answer how that can be carried with us?
Well, I mean, the fact that you're bringing up the other side of the river being death is interesting to me because when you were talking about the river, whenever I hear anything about a river, I immediately think of Hermann Hesse and the story of Siddhartha. And when he's seeking spiritual perfection and guidance. He doesn't find it and eventually ends up at a river, and he cannot cross the river without the ferryman.
Exactly.
And the other side of the river ended up being death for Siddhartha because he went into the material world and only ended up back at the other end of the river again, across from the ferryman, and ends up becoming the ferryman. And I think it's a poignant story to exactly what you're talking about. The river is a very important metaphorical element in a lot of stories, and even just going with the flow in life, going up against the river, you typically want to go with the flow, no?
Absolutely. Jimmy, when I fish the other side, I want you standing next to me.
Hey, you got it. I'm there.
Kevin, what's going on in your back of your personal unconscious? What's coming forth?
No, well,
you got ideas.
Because we're talking, and I know we're going to be going into this collective unconscious, the fact that your work about the Paleolithic art, some things never change because these people, I mean, they didn't have the language that we have today. They didn't get the kind of same message that Billy Joel got, but they were obviously picking up on something. They were being able to picture what we're talking about tonight. So you have to question where that comes from in ancient times, and the same thing comes from today. That's what I'm sitting here kind of pondering over.
So I'm going to blow your minds now. Ready? Sit back.
Go for it.
I believe it's not a human invention.
Oh.
It doesn't mean I believe it's an alien invention or the Anunnaki or all those sorts of things. I think that we had this before we were humans. Before, when we were we were the common ancestor of the chimp. Chimps have social structures. And in those social structures, they have heroes and they have bullies and they have nurturing mothers and they have teachers. They don't verbalize it the way that we do, but they have the same archetypal structures that we have. A juvenile chimp sees the bully, the huge testosterone male. He's banging on his chest. The little chimp knows to stay away. He knows to stay away from that bully because it's in his collective unconscious. So when we talk about the river transformation, we talk about the mountain of faith. We're talking about archetypal images, whether they be heroes and villains and teachers and apprentices. The heavenly sky or the place of paradise. they're all archetypal characters that we have within us. Now, perhaps the chimps don't see the archetypal mountain because they don't sit on top of mountains. They don't climb mountains at great peril just to be there like we do. So chimps and our common ancestor had some, I don't want to say lower level, but they had a simpler level. But they had the same fundamental archetypal characters that we have within ourselves that we recognize, that maybe they don't recognize it, maybe it just comes forth. So apparently, as we became more human, or as human as we are today, we brought more symbols and more of these archetypal characters within us. And as I said with Jung found the two most common characters, or non-organic characters in dreams, were the mountain and the body of water.
You see, this is where I could really kind of throw in the quantum kind of aspect to this, because there's a lot of people talks about a quantum field. And this quantum field, I would imagine, has been here since the beginning of time, and it contains past, present, future, everything contained at once. Call it the source, Bernie. So many different ways you could describe this. And I think there are so many different kind of ways that it is described, and people think we're talking about a different thing, but I do believe, let's call it the source for argument's sake, and I think that would have been here forever, before the chimps, through that, and it'll be here forever more as well. Maybe we'll advance more and we'll develop these kind of images, these archetypes even further. But it seems to me that it's definitely coming from somewhere that has always existed.
Well, so what appears to be different from us, the chimps and the dolphins and the whales and so forth, is that we bring forth the archetypes in stories and in song, that we have some ability to relate to them, that we can talk about our dreams. Whereas as far as we know, chimps don't do that, and dolphins, we don't have a dolphin language, so we're not really sure what dolphins are doing, other than being a little smarter than us in the oceans. So somehow we carry this from one generation to another, and some people will say, was an Akashic record, that we somehow tap like the cloud with the web, that we somehow tap into it. But I'm not sure about that. Well, one of the things that people, they forget is that the day that you're born, or that you conceive from your mother, is not really the day that you're born. The Chinese start the birthday when the person is fundamentally conceived or near to conception. And so are we born when we pop out of mom, or are we born when we start hearing what the mother is saying and what they hear in the environment of the parents? And perhaps maybe there's some sort of downloading information from the mother itself.
That's a very interesting idea, actually. I'd never even thought of that, because you're right. Technically, we would be born the moment that conception takes place. And especially then as we're developing, because we are taking in information from our mother and from the outside world to a certain respect as well, Bernie.
Absolutely. Yeah, they used to have mothers, I don't know if they still do today, but listen to Beethoven and Mozart and, baby Mozart. And so the child becomes indoctrinated to classical music, which hypothetically would make them smarter. But of course, we in our world, that there's a lot of great music out there besides Mozart and Beethoven. But clearly, when we pop out, we don't have a blank slate, and but we still have symbols. So my assumption is that the infant doesn't see a cosmic mountain. Okay, not just my assumption. Definitely sees the water, and we say that we're reborn within the water. And St. John the Baptist gave rebirth to people in the water, and so the second coming of the individual. But it's a conundrum.
And we are on the break, and we love conundrums here. You're listening to Bernie Taylor, and you can check out his website at beforeorion.com. Now, we'll be back after these short messages. We have just started to scrape the surface. Don't go anywhere, folks. This is going to be brilliant. We'll be right back.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Times are changing. The circus of politics, healthcare's low standards and high prices, and let's not forget food quality. What to do? Arm yourself with Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. In a world of chemical imbalance and poor air and water quality, it's time you make a move. Log on to getthetea.com and stock up on organic non-GMO supplements. Don't forget the tea. Cleansing your body never felt so good. And we have a brand new tea called Takedown Tea, which helps support healthy glucose. All natural body support so you can be at your best, naturally. All you have to do is log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. We're not a fad that comes and goes. We are the real deal. Join us and armor up. Getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Changing America's health one tea bag at a time. Times are changing. The circus of politics.
Jimmy Taylor is our special guest right here on the Kev Baker Show today. I've got Jimmy Jeans here with me as well. And Jimmy, you are grinning from ear to ear, man. I can hear it in your voice. Told you would enjoy this guest and you would enjoy the subject matter even more. So you having fun, Jimmy?
Oh, yeah, you're right. I am smiling from ear to ear. This is a great conversation, and I just can't wait. I mean, we're barely even scratching the surface, and I just can't wait to get more into what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Absolutely, and we're going to be taking a look at another archetype now, Bernie, aren't we? Where are we going now, Bernie?
Absolutely. Well, you know, one of the reasons that Jimmy's smiling there is that he was just hanging out with Billy Joel. You know,
And that's what it is.
Okay, so we're gonna do another archetype. So we've talked about the cosmic mountain, we call it the river of transformation, but there's another one out there that's we can't escape for. It's the singularity of creation. Today we call it the Big Bang. But in biblical times it was called creation itself. But before biblical times and among indigenous peoples, it's called the cosmic egg. And have you guys ever heard the story, any cosmic egg stories before?
Jimmy, I'm sure you've heard cosmic egg stories before, right?
You know what? I am stoked to hear what you have to say about the cosmic egg, because you got me all hyped up on the break, and now you're...
So in Chinese mythology, Pengu woke from the cosmic egg to create the world, separating yin and yang with the swing of his giant axe. The cosmic egg is found among the Egyptian, the Dogon, the Norse, the Vedic, and Greek traditions. In these Paleolithic cave images, we find a man hatching from a cosmic egg. We have another man holding a cosmic egg. This is a story that goes throughout the world. It's an ancient creation myth. It's a story of a singularity of a beginning. It explains the great mystery, one of the two great mysteries, the great mystery of where we come from as a people, as beings itself, and the other is where do we go in the end. And of course, we can individually or collectively have an answer for that.
And of course, the Dogon, I mean, that is a tribe of people who, let's just say they were well ahead of their time. And in fact, it was only in the past, 50 years or so that we actually started to scientifically come across some of the things that they talk about or they still kind of celebrate to this day when it comes to things like Sirius A, Sirius B, stuff like that. And the Dogon people, it's always been a fascination of mine, Bernie, and them alone, these ain't that ancient people. They had so much wisdom, and one has to wonder where they got it from.
Well, the Dogon are culturally related to the Egyptians. And if you go back before then, you'd find a tree that would take them to the Vedic, the Norse, and the Greek. But this archetype of the cosmic egg is also found in China. So it has to be even deeper in time than that. It has to be so far, it has to be tens, if not hundreds of thousands of years, when there was that common connection between, the Asian people and the Dogon. So this cosmic egg, the singularity, is still part of us today. In I guess it was probably about 1940s, 40s, 1950s, Father Lamanter, a Belgian priest, worked out mathematically that there was a singularity in the universe, an expansion of the universe. And it was jokingly called, or he was ridiculed as inventing the Big Bang. And it was a orgasmic moment. That was the joke. And so we went through much about modern science not having the Big Bang as we have it today. It wasn't until Edwin Hubble, the astrophysicist, astronomer, he observed an expanding universe. And then later, after Hubble's findings came out, scientists, astrophysicists, and so forth, they came back to say, hey, this Big Bang isn't such a bad idea. So the Big Bang in modern science goes back to Father Lemaitre, and Father Lemaitre was inspired by the cosmic egg. And when Lemaitre came out with his story, Pope Pius was 12th or 13th. He was the Nazi pope. He was in league with the Reichstag. He came out and said, this scientifically proves that there was a singularity creation. Therefore, there must have been a creator. Lemaitre stepped back and said, hey, whoa, I'm a scientist. And you can interpret this any way you want, but this is the science, and this doesn't prove that there's a creator. And when Lemaitre came out with his findings, and he met Einstein. Einstein was totally against the Big Bang, or Lemaitre's expansion universe. Einstein said, your math is correct, but your physics is atrocious. So we today look at Einstein as this great visionary, but he didn't see the Big Bang, what the potential of it was.
Makes you wonder, Bernie, what came first, the cosmos or the egg?
So what came first? That is the question. That is the question of the first great mystery. And so we can answer the question in the minds of men by going back to our earliest stories. We can go back to that Paleolithic cave in Europe, this at El Castillo on the panel of disc, and we can see the man holding the cosmic egg. And it goes to the core of who we are and what we believe. And not just what we believe in churches, but it's what we truly believe in science.
I mean, how long are we going back for that cave art where we see this, Bernie? Mm-hmm. How old is that actual art?
34,000 years ago.
34,000 years ago, folks. Wrap your head around that.
So that could be the core of Pengu in the Chinese myth, and the Dogon, and the Egyptians, and the Vedics, and everybody else, because we're going so far back in time that there's a root to people, to mankind, and our stories and our myth.
Certainly, all seems to be coming from the same place, doesn't it?
It sure does, And we find this in this El Castillo cave in the panel of discs, but we came out of we presumably came out of Africa, and now we say we come out of Western North Africa because 300,000 years ago we have the earliest remains of Homo sapiens. So maybe we had this story before 34,000 years ago. We could have had it up to 300,000 years ago as far as we can currently date in West North Africa. So these stories go back pretty far deep in time, and it asks the question: if we have these stories all around the world and they go so far back deep in time, is it because we carry within our dreams, as Billy Joel came out with his song, or do we carry them through myths and storytelling? There's one for you, Jimmy.
I think it's a bit of both, Jimmy. What do you think? Is Jimmy there? I'm not sure if Jimmy's there, but I think there might be a bit of both to that, actually, Bernie. I think there might be some ancestral DNA where we literally carry it with us and we're picking up on that from our ancient past. And I also wonder if we're tapping into something in our dreams. We often talk about dreams on the show here, Jimmy, don't we? And just where do we go? Where do the dreams come from? So I think it might be a bit of both. What do you think, Jimmy? Can't hear Jimmy now. I think he's gone.
He'll be back. He's not going anywhere.
There he is.
I got 6 mute buttons going here, and literally, but seriously, no, the cosmic egg is really an intriguing subject matter, simply because within the egg are all of the ingredients for something to happen after the gestation period. And I think this ultimate creator aspect is really interesting too, because I hear a lot about grand architects. But in relation to that, an architect is creating with materials and things that exist already. So the architect is not like a godlike production. It's more creating out of something that already exists. So the cosmic ingredients for what we're calling reality seem to have been inside that cosmic egg. And when the egg was cracked, that is supposedly the magic moment in time when everything started. According to some of these cave paintings, it looks like they may kind of bear a little bit of that out, eh?
Absolutely. And so what's happened, though, is that we've created this construct, this psychological construct that we can't escape from. And so scientists today, or physicists, they have many ideas about how the universe was formed or not formed, or you go to a Chinese buffet, and that's what you see all the different variations.
And even our friend Brian, I mean, he was open and honest enough. I mean, he researches the Big Bang. He's looking for the light that came from the immediate moments after that happened, and yet he was still big enough and honest enough to say, look, Big Bang's just a theory. In the end of the day,
it's just a theory, yeah.
So many different ways this could have happened.
Exactly, but what's happened is, because we have this myth, this story of the cosmic egg within us, and we tell it different ways, we can't escape from it. So scientists, they came on board with the Big Bang, not because it was a singular truth, but because it's what people could relate to. It's a story that we could understand. And so all the other ones that, all these electric universes, all these other ideas out there, we can't put it in the framework of the average human mind. We can't tell a story with it. We can't find a beginning and an end. We can't see those two great mysteries. And so this cosmic egg, this Big Bang, is a story that is never ending. It's a story with costumes change, the sets change, but the motif stays the same.
Absolutely. And, I sometimes say that history, it doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes, and it has these kind of common threads that run throughout, doesn't it, Jimmy?
It does. And I wanted to say, what the Big Bang really resonates within me when I think of the Big Bang. I do not think of this single point in the blackness where the universe was created. What I think about is the divine spark of creation, because I think the electricity involved in the divine spark of creation exists in everything that we have and do. And I think that the cosmic egg and the just exploding creation that happened in that one moment, the divine spark, I think is such a powerful thing, and it's here on Earth with us, and it's here in every individual. The divine spark of creation exists from the moment that our soul is infused into this flesh suit. We're coming from someplace else, and we're integrated into this input device known as the human body. And I think that, Kev, you know what I mean?
No, absolutely. And I was going to ask Bernie, would you say then that this place where Jimmy says we're all coming from, and I would agree there, would you say that this is the kind of the source, this unconscious field that we're all tapping into, that was here before everything, as opposed to a Big Bang?
So I can't speak of it from a physics standpoint, and I'm not sure if anybody can.
No,
but what I can speak to a different perspective. I can speak to it from the Paleolithic cave art. What was the story that they believed? But I can also speak to it to what Native Americans think about. A few years ago, I went to a first salmon ceremony in the Columbia Basin. And the Native Americans, the Columbia Basin tribes, it's a ceremony that commemorates what the great Almighty brings to them, the great mystery. And they line up, they have all the different, let's say, root vegetables or root plants that they would eat, and then they had the salmon, and they come in the same. They're in the same order as they arrive, and the Native American tradition historically didn't recognize that salmon juveniles went out to the ocean and came back again. All they recognized is that the great Almighty brought them the salmon. And that was their sustenance, and not just for the individual salmon, but for the individual Indians. But the bears were eating the salmon, and the bears were pooping and were growing plants, and the deer were eating the plants. And so it was part of the whole ecosystem of the salmon bringing life from the ocean. And they believed it was the great Almighty that brought it to them. Well, every year they had this first salmon ceremony, and every year they commemorated the beginning of this time. of when the salmon first came to them. They didn't reflect back and say, well, we had more salmon last year or we'll have more next year. They just, they cherished that moment that the first salmon came to them. And it was their cyclical time that happened every year. And we can take this back to the Paleolithic cave art, this gallery of discs, and we can see the same cyclical time. And what we find, we can see the bird that hatched, that dropped the cosmic egg. It's the now extinct great auk, which is something, looks like a penguin, but it's not a penguin, okay? And they died off, maybe 60, 70 years ago. Well, cosmologically, the great auk is Cygnus. And we can go around that whole panel and we can find most of the constellations from the ancient Greeks. So the ancient Greeks had been to this cave, as well as the Egyptians and others, and they drew the constellations from them. And they found that story, the cosmic egg. But there's a difference between the Egyptian story, the Greek story, and everybody else, and this Paleolithic story. The Paleolithic story happens, the cosmic egg hatches in June every year. It happens when the actual great auk's egg actually is hatched. So in the Paleolithic mind, they were telling a story. Every year there was a cosmic creation, and every year the universe expanded and brought forth to them. And they could see, of course, they looked to the night sky before and they could see all the constellations. But in their mind, the great creation was cyclical. It happened every year. And they could retell that story every year. In the same way the Native Americans had the first salmon ceremony and told stories of this new beginning, this rebirth. And so they were thinking in cyclical time, in annual cyclical time, I should say. And of course, there was probably larger cycles with the moon and so forth. But when we somehow changed over time, and a few thousand years ago, we went to this point of there being an original beginning, that there was the first great mystery of where we came from and where we're going, in the ultimate. But in this Paleolithic mind, and among the Native Americans, they weren't interested in the Big Bang. They weren't interested in the cosmic egg as a singularity from some disimportant time. For them, they yearly celebrated the myth that the story that it happens every year. And so somehow we changed the story. And when we changed the story, we actually shifted our perception within the collective unconscious.
Yeah, we were looking for like an almost a definite start point as opposed to just, celebrating and enjoying the fact that the cyclical cycle of life.
So why did the Greeks come up with that, and the Egyptians so forth? Because all these constellations are actually animals. And all the ones Pegasus and Aegea, and actually this people as well. And there's a dolphin, which is Pisces. And then we have Orion, we have Hercules, and we have Leo as the lion. We have Draco. We have a crocodile, which becomes Draco. Well, they all actually overlap each other. They're kind of condensed in this cosmic egg, which is the panel itself. And so if you look at that, you're going to come up with the concept of there was once a singular beginning, okay? Because there's no other way to see it, and that it all exploded from that point. So if you look at that, if most people look at that, including the ancients, and they looked at that image and they said, oh my God, this was a singularity, this was a beginning. But within the context of the story, if you actually look at the constellations and you look at the animals within them, all the animals are all in that mid-June time period. And so they're talking about a cyclical, an annual beginning versus a singular source. But somehow, not modern man, but the ancients had all been to this cave and other similar ones like it, and they came up with a singularity, which fundamentally shifted our collective unconscious.
Jimmy, you're listening to this as well, and this is quite interesting, the fact that we've got these the people who celebrate the cycles, and then at a certain point, like Bernie's saying here, that shifted, and it shifted our whole consciousness, Jimmy.
It does, and I don't know why, but for whatever reason, Plato's The Cave keeps popping up into my mind as you're talking about this, because quite a bit of activity has gone on within caves throughout antiquity, I even saw something yesterday. It was kind of interesting that people had mentioned that people were living in stone buildings and stone structures and inside of caves because of the natural frequencies that were being utilized in antiquity, maybe in Egypt, through the pyramid type structures. So I think this is just fascinating conversation. I'm so happy to be here with you.
It's the cave. The cave is another archetype, and so that's what we find throughout the world. Jesus, there's two versions of how Jesus was born or where he was born. One, he's born in the manger. Kev, guess where the other one was?
A cave.
A cave.
See.
When Jesus dies, where does Jesus go after he dies? Where did they put him?
Yeah, they put him in the cave and the stone. Yeah.
And where did he resurrect from? A cave.
And thinking as well, Da Vinci, I like looking into Da Vinci, and a cave is very, very central to his story as well.
Exactly. Da Vinci went into a cave early in life, and he came out with a new way of seeing the world. I believe that Da Vinci went into a Paleolithic cave art, because I've seen some of the art that comes post him coming out of the cave, and there's some commonalities going on there. It's interesting. And of course, in the Islamic tradition, Muhammad is in a cave. He's met with by the angel Gabriel, who teaches him the great philosophy, the great words. And so we have this archetypal cave motif that we go into. So when we go into the cave, we're actually going into the mind. We're going into the psyche. The Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung, he had a dream. In this dream, he goes into an older home. And as he walks and he sees that it's Renaissance. It's before his time. He continues down. He goes into a room, and it's a much older time than Renaissance, perhaps Roman times. And then he sees there's a trap door in the bottom of this room, and he opens it up, and it drops down, and he goes into the hole. And when he goes into the hole, he finds there's two skulls. And this is in his dream. And in that dream, he recognizes that this is primitive man. This is Paleolithic man who lived in these caves. And that the Paleolithic mind, that psyche, is still within ourselves. And from that moment and from that dream, Carl Jung comes out and he starts studying myth throughout the world. And he comes to this story, this concept of the monomyth that, of course, Joseph Campbell epitomized. This monomyth that there are singular stories, there's common themes, that these archetypes that we've been talking about for the last roughly an hour. And so that's where this all comes from. It goes to that cave. And that same cave that we found the cosmic egg, that we see the image of the cosmic egg, that was somehow we changed time. Now, Native Americans have the same story. They have this annual cycle in nature. But we somehow we're enlightened in some way that there had to have been an actual early beginning and an end. And that's where we come from, this cosmic egg. That's where we find the Big Bang. And that's where we seek to find the two great mysteries, from where we came and where we're going, both collectively and as individuals.
It's two of the biggest questions that always come up on the show here from time to time. Where did we come from and where are we going, Jimmy? How often have we said that, man?
A million times. And you know what's interesting is I find myself doing the same thing. And what happens for me a lot of times is I miss today, because I'm looking about where I'm going and I'm thinking about where I've been, and I don't focus my intention on today. A lot of times I get caught up in it, because it is such a defined pathway that we can see worldwide. No matter where you look, the indigenous peoples of that area have stories that are similar. They have drawings that appear to be similar inside of these caves, inside of these structures. The logos and the power of the logos seems to resonate throughout this conversation, in metaphor as well as in cold hard facts about how we came through on our history here on the planet. And I think there's a lot more to the history than we've been told. And I think you're tapping into quite a bit of what's going on there tonight.
Absolutely. We've looked at the Ohio caves as well, Bernie. Christopher Everard came on here and spoke about them. I don't know if you've looked into the cave art there, but again, it doesn't matter.
You mean the mounds?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think there are mounds and there's also some cave paintings there as well. I'll dig some up, but it doesn't matter, seems to matter the geographical kind of distances these caves are separated by. These ancient peoples, you know, they were all tapping into the same thing that we're talking about here tonight, these same archetypes, despite the fact that they were in different parts of the world.
We can't escape from them. And so it asks that question, you know, going back to, is it in our DNA? Does the mother pass it within to the child for those many months the child has consciousness or thinking, let's say thinking abilities? Or do we pass it down for some common myth? Or do we keep telling the same stories? You know, there's two fundamental stories out there in the literature and the movies. The hero goes on a journey or the stranger enters the room. You got two stories. You know, just sort of flipping through your inventory and you've got those two or some combination. And of course, the hero goes on a journey and becomes a stranger that enters the room for somebody else. Because we can't escape from these stories. And what these mysteries do, or rather what these myths do, is they help to explain the mysteries. They help to express the inexpressible. We can't see beyond. We can't go beyond the horizon. We can't cross to the other end of the stream. Billy Joel couldn't do it. We can't cross the river of Styx and come back. There's only two people who have done that in time. And one of them was Hercules, the great hero. He went to the cave and he came back from the dead. And he dragged back the Cerberus, the three-headed dog. But so we can't return from the dead. But so we have to express that through these myths and these stories. And we express the myths and stories, the two great mysteries, from where we came and where we're going.
We're almost on the break. The end of the first hour is upon us. We've got 1 hour to go. This is pretty amazing so far. Jimmy's loving it. I'm loving it. And I'm sure all of you out there are absolutely loving it as well. 1 hour to go, folks, with Bernie Taylor. BeforeOrion.com. Please visit the website. And we'll be back after these short messages. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Bernie Taylor is our special guest tonight, and you can find his work over at BeforeOrion.com. That's BeforeOrion.com. And he's also got a YouTube channel as well. I believe it goes under the name of Before Orion. Just search for Bernie Taylor Before Orion over on YouTube. A lot of little thought-provoking videos on there. Lots to consider. And tonight, so much information here. And this is really, this is out of my considered comfort zone. Usually I get into all the kind of nuts and bolts and science. But that's a good thing, folks. It really is, because this helps to expand our minds. And it really does. This is something new for me. I'm learning a lot here tonight. I've got a lot of notes taken down. I can imagine I'm going to be filling another page of notes, Bernie, as we continue for the next hour. But you mentioned there we're going to get into animals now, right?
Absolutely. Well, we've all left our comfort zone a little bit, and I did, of course, through this project. I can put a warning statement out there right now. If you've come this far in the program and you've bought into a fraction of what we said, you will be excommunicated from whatever religion you belong to, unless you're a shamanic. Because we have tread on every religion there is by bringing a common root to every one of them. So we're in bad behavior, might get banned off or whatever.
We like to rattle cages. It's good. That's sometimes the best way to wake people up, Bernie.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about animals now, because we've talked about the cosmic mountain and the river transformation. We talk about the cosmic egg, all these archetypes. But there are archetypes that are even closer to us, archetypes that we can't escape from. And Jung found in the dreams of man that the most common animals in dreams are the elephant, the bull, the bear, black and white birds, fishes, snakes, and horses.
Snakes, man. Snakes. Yes, definitely snakes.
So why do people around the world have these within them? Well, I can tell you right now that all of those animals are on that cave in El Castillo, on that gallery of discs.
So they were having these same dreams as well, right?
They were having. So this is a night scene. Well, it's a day scene and it's a night scene because these are animals that are present on the terrestrial world and in the marine environment. But they projected those same animals. The lion became Leo in the night sky, and the great auk became Cygnus, and the dolphin becomes Pisces. And so the animals in the world were projected, so as above, so below. But they're the same animals as Jung found in the dreams of man, the most common in the dreams of man. So why do so Jimmy, here's a question. I mean, there really is no answer to this, but we can only speculate. Why do we have these animals in our dreams?
I would say that they may represent different aspects of our inherent messages that you were talking about that may reside in the DNA from past, from memory, of some kind of a memory. But I mean, I think I know that from where I'm born in the Native American tarot cards, I am in the Bear Clan. And I also remember a really great movie called Clan of the Cave Bear. So for some reason, I'm personally drawn to the bear.
Interesting. So the animals speak to us. So in Native American traditions, also hunter-gatherers, the animals spoke to them, and people would name themselves after the animal that came to them in a dream. So Sitting Bull, for example, was named. The bull came to him in his dream, and so the animals speak to us, and we identify with them. And today in the movies, of course, the big heroes of the time are Ant-Man, Spider-Man, Batman. Now we have Aquaman, which is really a merman, right? And a fishman. And so that we draw strength from the animals. In this Pelothic cave image on the gallery of discs, the hero, as he goes through his journey on land in the marine environment, and which is projected in the night sky, he draws strength from the animals. So in almost every animal, some part of the hero, of this human being, overlaps with the animal. So the man overlaps with the dolphin to become a merman. He overlaps with the horse to become a centaur, which is Sagittarius. He overlaps with the eagle to become the avianoid, and so Aegea. And so as he transitions through time and space on his journey, he draws strength from the animals. And so that's the original hero's journey, is one of the animals help us. And most of the animals, by the way, are also female. And so what Jung may be talking about is that we draw strength from the animals themselves. And I'm going to tell you guys a dream I've probably told 3 or 4 people in my life. And this is a dream I had about 4 years ago when I was working on this project. And I had identified a cheetah and her kittens in the image. And I also had a dog that had died two years earlier. And in my half dream state, or I was in the morning, my dog came to my bed. My dog had passed on. And my dog, he comes to my bed and he wakes me up. And but I'm still in this half dream state. And he takes me to the window, and the patio window. And through this big glass window, there's a cheetah out there. And so I open up the door, and the cheetah runs away, but my dog is still standing there. And then I wake up. Then the next night I have the same dream. My dog comes to me, and this time I'm like, go away, I want to sleep. And he licks me, my face and my hands, and he's just gonna wake me up. And he takes me to the door again, but this time the door is slightly open, and the cheetah is there, but my dog goes through the door. And he leaves me. And I've never had a dream about my dog again. So what do you guys think? What was my dog telling me?
Jimmy?
I don't know. I'm just kind of trying to digest the details.
So my dog leaves. This is my dog that died 2 years ago.
Do you think he was like the dog telling you to let go of him?
Yeah.
The dog was telling me to let go of me. Yeah.
That's exactly
what it was.
Wow.
So my dog, I put him down at 16 years. He was a Vizsla. And he lived to past 16, and he would have lived a few more years. But he was climbing over something, fell down the stairs, and broke his back. And we couldn't go further past that. But my dog, I had been through a divorce and all these different upsets. My dog had been with me through all those years. So my dog was really telling me, is not that I let go of the dog itself, because I'd let go of my dog when I cried and he died, but he's also telling me that I need to let go of the life I had before, that it was time to move on. And that's my interpretation of dream. But there's also the cheetah in the image. There's also the cheetah. And there's a backstory behind that. As I lived near the Oregon Zoo, and I'd identified the cheetah in the image with somebody else that helped me, a wildlife biologist. And and I should go to the zoo and I should look at this cheetah. And, it turned out the cheetah was pivotal, because you have a cheetah in the European cave told this wasn't in Europe, that the image wasn't in Europe. It was either in the Middle East somewhere that this person had been to, or in Africa. So the cheetah was telling me that this was the direction I should go. I should be looking towards outside of Europe and perhaps into Africa. And ultimately, it wasn't about a month. It was later that I found the other animals that took me to that place.
Wow, man, that's an amazing kind of connection there, how it was telling you where to look next. That fascinates me. Now, I would love to share some of my dreams I'm having right now, Bernie, but I'm on this crazy drug from the doctor, and I'm telling you, there's absolutely no sense to be made of the dreams I'm having recently.
Well, give us a piece of one. It's time, Hey, we're all sharing today. Jimmy, you're next.
Okay, then, like I say, a lot of them have contained snakes. Now, you may laugh at this, but we talk about David Icke a lot on the show. Reptilians come up from time to time, and in my mind, I think the snakes are representative of the subjects that I sometimes cover on the show. And like I say, the drug I'm on, it's notorious for putting people into a really weird dream state. Mm-hmm. So whether there's something to be read into them or not, I'm not too sure. But the snake, even before this, it was something that if I was having a kind of a not so nice dream, the snake would often show up.
Interesting. So I'm not a depth psychologist or anything like that. I'm not a therapist. I've been to Jungian presentations, and when there's a female speaker, she'll talk about the snake as being, how should I say, attacking the female. Okay, it's a male snake attacking the female, so a phallic reference. But in the Paleolithic cave image, we look back in time, we can actually see the snakes, and the snakes they're benign. I mean, they're benign to the individuals in the images. So they're not attacking the images. They're not, penetrating women, all this sort of stuff. It doesn't happen. But so the snakes are all. The hero also encounters these snakes on his journey. Now, just as we switch the cosmic egg story to make it from the beginning and end, not an annual rebirth, we may also be changing the metaphor of the snake, and so that when a woman does see a snake, she may feel that it's intrusive to her, and you may the reptilian characters that you through David Icke and the other people that have or on this that wavelength, it could be that.
Yeah, it might be nothing to do with Icke. I mean, it's just the way I put two and two together, Bernie, and it could be nothing to do with that, and it could be something far deeper,
It could be something far deeper, absolutely. And so there's this motif in psychoanalysts that they believe that we of course we come from some common ancestor of the chimpanzee, and then we were up in the trees escaping the snakes, and the snakes were chasing us up there. And so some very long period of time, millions of years, we were fundamentally the only animal that could get to us was the snake. Okay.
Jimmy, I know you want to jump in here as well. Is there any animals that appear in your dreams, Jimmy?
Yeah, not so much. I really don't have those type of dreams for the most part. My dreams are more situational for the most part, kind of like I'm living a life somewhere else. It's almost like I go to a specific type of place over and over again for a period of time. My dreams are never really.
What's the place? Talk to us. What's the place?
It's recently. I mean, they've been different my whole life. But recently it's been sort of a dry, arid sort of oak zone, oak trees, that type of thing, kind of canyony. I'm living in.
Do the oak trees have leaves on them? Do they have leaves on them? Yeah,
they do. And I'm living in a house that has a deep driveway that's real steep, and it's up on some kind of a hill area. There's lots of, a lot of times my dreams are in the dark. So it's typically dark whenever I'm there. As far as any kind of, I really can't say that I really, at this moment, can't think of one dream I've ever had where I've had when I have dreams that are prophetic, I don't have to interpret them because they represent just as they are. There's no metaphorical value to them. They're just more or less kind of like a movie or a slice. And I don't even know how many times I may have manifested that reality in my own life and finding those places, because a couple of those times that I've had those dreams, I've ended up living in those type of places that I dreamed about.
Well, I have to ask, Bernie, why were you interested in the leaves on the trees? Does that mean something to you?
Yeah, actually, it does. It means a lot. If you ever sit in front of a psychologist and they ask you to draw they do tests, okay? And one of the tests they ask you to do is draw a picture of a tree.
My trees are always bare. I like to doodle, and I've always got like twigs and branches, but I never put the foliage on them.
And I'm not completely on board with this analysis, but the interpretation of the leafless tree is that the mother is dead. Individual has lost connection to the mother. So there's that is the psychoanalyst interpretation of it.
If you have the leaves, then I take it you still have that connection.
Well, that is the psychoanalyst interpretation.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, that is quite interesting. What do you think, Jimmy?
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah,
I would never even
very thought-provoking.
Yeah, I mean, I would have never even thought of that particular aspect of a dream to even have any symbolism at all. So that's really powerful. I pulled up some stuff about the cheetah that I thought was really interesting. The spiritual side of the cheetah is the speed to take action quickly when you know something is the right thing to do. The cheetah's power means to take action when opportunity beckons you. Mm-hmm. I think that's interesting. That
ties into my stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's interesting simply because maybe the cheetah is a totem animal or a power animal for you, because I think the cheetah does. Based on sitting here with you today and the time I heard you before on Kev's show, you are like the cheetah.
Yeah, I'd actually considered that as a totem. I had actually considered. So I've looked at dozens of animals on these panels. And I'd considered that maybe the cheetah was speaking to become my totem animal. A totem. I haven't fully accepted that yet, but that is the possibility.
For anyone out there, Bernie, a totem animal, what would that refer to? And I'm including myself here. This is new kind of language on me. So
the bull, Chief Sitting Bull, was his totem animal. It was his spiritual animal. It's what he related to. Native, you could have it individually or as a tribe. A totem animal could be, the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawk could be their totem animal. They draw strength from it. They learn from it. It gives them wisdom. It's a basic tradition among people around the world. And the totem animal, of course, Batman, it's the bat, and Ant-Man, it's the ant, and Spider-Man's a spider. So individuals have totem animals, as well as clans and tribes, nations, and sports teams, and so forth. They give us strength, and we identify. And, in a few thousand years, someone's going to dig up Seattle, Washington, and they're going to find all these Seahawks stuff. They're like, oh my God, this was their totem animal. And, it was. But it was a totem animal that the people of Seattle borrowed from Native Americans in that region. And so the totem, it goes back to an earlier time of animals that were in their environment that they continue to draw strength from. And the Seahawk, of course, it's a myth. It's how it's drawn is mythical, but it goes back to an original bird.
Jimmy's got something to add here as well, don't you, man?
Yeah. I just wanted to say, a lot of times when we think about these animals and we think about, native peoples, a lot of times people just perceive things in a way that just doesn't justify what was going on back then. Because it's important to know that, there weren't lights everywhere. When it got dark, there were scary animals out there. There was noises. There was, before there was fire, before they had light, they had to figure out how to live and survive. And they would see these animals, and they would have to figure out a way to become the animal itself and to possess the qualities of that animal in order to make it through one more day of life on this planet when it got dark. I mean, there was some scary beasts running around out there. And so you can see how metaphysically in the dark, in those dark moments when it's real pitch black dark, they went inside themselves, and that's when they journeyed to the cosmos and identified with these animals and became the animal. It's like, when does the messenger become the message?
Yes, you're right on. And so we have this active imagination. We're dreaming. We're dreaming in the night, in our own personal space, that darkness within. And so it brings out these archetypes, these characters in our dreams, and we can't escape from them. And then we find the totem animals. We find the heroes on his journey who draws the strength in his animals, and we each find that animal within us. Now, here's something interesting about this panel, which going to blow everybody's mind, is that most of the images, the animals, are female. Almost every one of them, and when he overlaps with the character, in most cases, he actually becomes almost like the child or the young of the female. And so the hero, the character is most certainly male, because the artist shows the body parts, but he's taught by the females of the species as he goes in his journey. And I can only think of, like, there's the Barbary ape, which is male, but Barbary apes, what unique about them is that the male actually takes care of the young, not of uncertain paternity, whether he knows it's his own. And then there's the lion Leo, who's also with the lioness. So which one he's protected by or learns from, it's unclear. But it's the females of the species that give the strength to this hero on his journey, which in most of the most dominant animal in Paleolithic art is the horse, and it's most commonly the female, the mare, and she's pregnant, which tells us about time. And so we're talking about not ferocious animals, but we're talking about nurturing animals, whether they be the lion, the giraffe, the Iberian lynx, the mongoose, and there's bear and the crocodile. There's a crocodile, a huge crocodile. But also with that crocodile, we have the juvenile reptile, the baby crocodile. And so you have the mother protecting your young, and that mother crocodile also gives strength to this hero on his journey. So it's a different way of, their way of connecting to the world was not of fear, even though there were things that go bump in the night, and there's no Siberian tigers in this whole thing. But they definitely... they drew from within themselves in that darkness that we find.
And when I hear of this female kind of being represented a lot in the animals, I think of that maternal aspect, and also the life giver. You know the fact it's that circle of life again, this kind of female aspect. But I'm wondering, Bernie, in the times we're living in, how long before they even ban the hero archetype? This kind of weird, politically correct world that we're living in now, where you have to kind of make everything genderless. Who knows how long even we'll be able to talk about these subjects any longer?
Well, in this image, most certainly the hero on the journey is male. He encounters a female who's very much in distress, okay? So she is not the hero. But the animals within its world are the females. The animals he draws strength from. But we can look at our modern time. The heroes have transformed. If you look at Disney, Moana is the heroine on the journey, and she travels through the constellations. She encounters all these animals and these demons and so forth within their respective space and time. And you have Mulan, and you have the woman in Frozen, and the character in Frozen. And so in our modern time, we're bringing in the female as the hero, and there have been times in the past where the female was the heroine as well. But in this story and in this place, there's this balance between the two of the male hero who draws on the strength of the female characters, which is not what I wasn't expecting it by any degree. And it took me a little while to kind of like come to grips with that one. But here's another interesting perspective on this too. Is of course we have the story of Noah, who puts all the 2 by 2 puts the animals on the ark, and they after was it so many 40 days 40 nights they land on top of Mount Sinai. Or was it Arafat? Is it Arafat or Sinai? And so we've always pictured these things as having a male and a female giraffe or elephant and things like that. What if the original story that came from wasn't the adult man, the two adult giraffes, but what if it was the female giraffe and this hero on his journey who is in fact becomes a juvenile giraffe?
That's an interesting way of looking at it, isn't it, Jimmy?
And so you have all these animals on this image. It's like an ark. It's like all the animals within an ark, within the hold of the ship. And so perhaps the original story of the Noah's Ark comes from this Paleolithic myth of all the animals that are stuck within this cosmic egg.
See, Jimmy, I always manage to offend anyone when it comes to Noah's Ark, don't I? Because I kind of always relate it to the 2 by 2 being 2 strands of DNA, because I always argue that you could never fit all these animals on one boat. In a certain sense, Bernie, I say it tongue in cheek, but so many people get riled up even when I throw it out there as a joke, don't they, Jimmy?
They do get riled up. And, that whole story about Noah, is a very interesting tale that I'm sure we could spend a few hours talking about in and of by itself. But I think it's an interesting story. And from my research, it looks like a lot of the important civilization came from that very ark. The people that were on that boat went on to help populate the earth, and the different races and the different structures that were formed out of the people that were on that boat and on the animals that were on that boat.
We're almost on the break, and I'm sitting kind of half laughing here because Barney's probably thinking to himself, can I hear something snoring? Well, you certainly can hear something snoring, Bernie. It's Jimmy's dog. And he's like the unsung hero of the Kev Baker Show. I just love that dog. I actually get people emailing to say it's so brilliant. You can hear it coming through. But just in case you were wondering what that was, that is Jimmy's dog. But we are almost on the break. And let me remind everyone, please check out Bernie's website over at beforeorion.com. And Bernie, where else can people keep up to date with all of your work, man?
Yeah, so follow me on Twitter, Before Orion, same for Instagram, Tumblr, Reddit, and but the base station is beforeorion.com, and everything can connect from there. I love giving presentations. I gave one at a high school a few weeks ago on neurodiversity, the art of seeing differently, and how people can look at these images and learn about themselves. And that was a lot of fun.
And we'll be back after these short messages, ladies and gentlemen. One segment to go with Bernie Taylor. Don't go anywhere.
I'm going to take it.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Final segment of today's Kev Baker Show with our special guest, Bernie Taylor. We've got Jimmy Jeans here, and we have Jimmy's dog. In spirit, if nothing else. And Jimmy, I tell you, that dog sounds like it has the soundest sleep in the world, brother. I love it.
He does. He's peaceful. He's, he feels peaceful when he's right here at old Jimmy's feet, where he likes to be. And this microphone, sir, picks him up. So it's not the snarling cave bear or anything like that. It's just old Noah.
I like it. We must have a good energy, a good frequency going on. And like I say, tonight's special guest, and he has given me so much to think about, and I would imagine so much for everyone out there to think about as well. Get into dreams, archetypes. But the next big thing we're going to get into, Bernie, is where are we going? What's this all about?
we've talked about where we come from, the first great mystery, which we look at through the Big Bang and the cosmic egg, and where we came, that before. So what is the great mystery beyond? And people sought throughout time to reach to that great mystery, to explore it. And Native Americans transcended to that place through the bird. In Abrahamic religions, we transcended, or we spoke to the great mystery through the angel Gabriel. In Buddhist and Hindu mythology, it's the Garuda. And from ancient Babylonians, it was Ishtar. And we find these same characters, these Avinoid, these birdmen, who are speaking to the great mystery beyond in these caves. And so we're going back to this. Where do we go from here? What is our do we reincarnate into something else? That cycle in nature? Does our spirit go someplace else? And this question had been asked throughout time among not just the ancients, but hunter-gatherers and back to Paleolithic times. They wanted to know or have some sense of where they would be after their own individual death on this earth.
It's almost
so we're talking big questions, esoteric stuff, Kevin. Where do you see yourself?
Well, it's almost as if we're yearning to find out what's on the other side of that river, on the other side of that body of water where we started. And me personally, I think we go back to where we came from. I think there's part of me feels that we made a conscious choice. Maybe conscious isn't the right word to use, because I think we come from pure consciousness and we come here to experience things in this 3D reality. Maybe it's almost like a university where we learn life lessons that we take back to where we come from. I'm not a big one for reincarnation. I just think we go back to a source of pure energy, pure light. That's just my take, though. Jimmy, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there, Kev. I think
there's no right answer to this, because unless somebody can really definitively go to that other side and come back and tell us, it's almost speculation, really, isn't it?
I know, and I've thought about that too. I mean, I've considered that, when it stops, maybe this is all there is, and maybe, I should pay more attention to what's going on right now and enjoy myself a little bit more. But for sure, I mean, I've had, I've been in the abyss. I spent time in the abyss when I was going through my cancer treatment, and I didn't think I was going to come out of that hole, but I did crawl out of the other side. And it's just like the kind of adventures that, you're talking about with these hero figures. Is that, a lot of times what happens is these hero figures are thrown into the darkness, and they start the journey as a fool and end up at the bottom of the pit and have to fight their way back out of it. And I think you see that metaphor play out over and over again throughout time. Even in initiation, some of these secret societies, a lot of the initiations take place in pitch black, in the darkness, underground, in caves. And I just think... I just think if I just say this, if Jesus sits at the right hand of God, okay, and there's two doors, you die and there's two doors, make sure you go to the door on the left, because it's stage right. Jesus sits on stage right if he's sitting on God's right hand.
Some good advice there. What say you, Bernie? What's your kind of take on this? Where do you kind of come down on this?
Well, I'm going to go back to yours, Kev, because I thought it was interesting. And Neil deGrasse Tyson, the physicist, has fundamentally the same view as you do. He says that throughout his life, he's eaten plants and animals, and he's gained energy from them. And when he dies, he doesn't want to be cremated. He wants to be put back into the earth. And so that energy that he has absorbed will go back into the earth and be disseminated again. Yeah. And so it's not a reincarnation per se, but it's back into the earth and back into the fabric of nature.
Absolutely. Come from stardust. So yeah.
So I'm going to tell you a story how I see things, which is a story that I've only told once before on a podcast, and I speak about allegorically within the book Before Orion. And it was about when it was the course of writing this book. And I had an injury, and a really nasty injury. I had sciatic nerve. I had damaged a nerve in my butt area, and I had sciatic nerve pain going down both legs. And I was ultimately bedridden for like 2 months. Okay, and it was the nastiest thing. And the doctors tried to figure it out because they really can't figure out nerve damage other than it hurts, right? And they took me to MRIs, and things got complicated. They gave me all kinds of stuff. And there was actually none of them hallucinogenic stuff, but just like, like muscle relaxants and that sort of thing. And there was this point in time that I was like in incredible pain. And I went back to my yoga training, and I tried to just breathe carefully and, deep in and out. That what you find, so your Shavasana at the end. Shavasana is the death pose in yoga. And in that moment, the pain went away. And I had this sense that I was like this levitation, and I did not climb to the ceiling of the room and bang on the top floor or anything like that. It didn't happen. But I did have that sense, and same as you have in Shavasana, that sense of weightlessness. And then there was a light. I'm going to tell you, there was an actual light. And the same, St. Paul on the road to Damascus. And in the biblical story, St. Paul saw the light from the outside, but my light was not from the outside. My light was definitely from within. And so my head internally went into this like illuminated state. And I've never had it before, and I've never had it after. And I've researched other people that have this state. And it's fundamentally all starts from the same thing. It starts from this place that people were in great pain, physical, emotional pain. And the physical pain, sometimes the physical pain is not due to an actual the injury itself, but something that came before the injury that created the physical pain. And in my case, the physical pain came from family stuff. And it was actually my daughter, who I still raise. She's going off to college soon, and she's doing just great. But it was what would happen to her in life if I died from this injury, from this condition, because it was not going very well. And in that moment, in that time, in that place on my bed, in that Shavasana moment when that light came to me, a voice came from inside me, as opposed to St. Paul, where the God spoke to him. And that voice from inside to me said that she's going to be okay. And so what I did in that moment is I let go of my fears of my daughter, what would happen to my daughter afterwards if I had died. And I could, whether I live or die for 10 years or 100 years makes no difference to me, because I've already, faced my fears of death. And there's something extraordinary also happened in that place. Is I'm in bed working on these images, and because just to get my mind off it. And one of the images is gallery of disc, which is finally a flat piece of paper, 8.5 by 11. It became like 3D to me. So in that moment, something rewired in my brain that has never changed, and it reset my brain. The same thing that people take these, ibogaine and these different hallucinogenic drugs, is it resetting? Well, I had that same resetting in this moment, that I lost my fear, and I've really lost fear since that time going forward. And what happened at the same time was that when it went into 3D, things just started popping out at me. And there was that's when I saw the giraffe, and that's where I recognized the dolphin. And I recognized we were going from Spain to across the water to Africa and back again. But I had been staring at these images for over a year, and I didn't see that. I didn't make those connections. And within seconds after that, within like 5 seconds, I was already online, and I was figuring out where the story went and what was that place that the hero visited. And so this happened in what we call a luminous moment. And I wear glasses, and that in that time I was wearing mistakenly my distance glasses, so everything was really blurry to me, but everything was really clear, because you can see that the vision comes from within inside. And for 3 days, in the same story with St. Paul, I didn't need glasses. And so somehow my vision had corrected. And it was a fascinating moment. And after that, I'll tell you that the pain did come back. It came back with a vengeance. But I ultimately recovered, and I'm just doing great right now. I've stood for this whole program. And so I've recovered from all this stuff, and life has gone on. But I did experience that sort of facing the death moment, the luminous moment that one has. And many other people have had this story. Jane Goodall had a similar event when her husband dies after a long struggle with cancer. They tried everything, and he dies. She goes back in the Gombe forest with the chimpanzee, and then and one day the rain starts falling, and she follows the chimpanzee into under the trees, and she huddles with them, and as the rain stops, she looks up and she sees the light, and the light is perceivably from the sun. But something else happens that moment to her, that her vision changes in the same way mine does. And she starts seeing spider webs as diamonds. And she hears all the birds and the insects in the environment as she had never heard them before. And she actually identifies individual songs. And she also comes to this idea that she is in that moment in the mind of the chimpanzee as the chimpanzee sees the world. And she came to the realization that she was really hiding in the Gombe forest. And since then, Jane Goodall has gone throughout the world. To save the animals, to save the chimpanzee really meant to save all the animals. And she's gone on this worldwide conservation effort. And she's one day, the next, she's visiting children or universities and different places to spread this message of worldwide conservation, that what is good for the animals is ultimately good for us, as makes us human beings. So as many people throughout our time have had this experience, many of the great mystics. And what we come out from this experience is that there is perceivably in our mind, there is a great beyond, and that we can all recover from, and that we can all have this glimpse of. But when I think of the great beyond and where I'm going to go, I don't think of the mad king. I don't think of the reptilian people. I don't think of all the suffering in this world. I think of one thing. I think of, what is that final thought that will be within the end? What will I take with you? And whether or not you believe there's an eternity that's beyond time itself, or that there's 6 or 10 seconds left in your brain, because it doesn't really matter whether either one it is. What does matter is, what is the final thought that you take with you in the end? And in my final thought, it will be with happy people, with my family, and loving people in my world, because that would be my final thought. That would be my heaven. And that's what would be my eternity.
Wow, this is really, really amazing, because, Jimmy, we often talk about how one show links into the other, and I wondered how it would happen tonight. But here we are, because last night we were speaking with Ronnie McMullen, and he was talking about, people and how they're almost scared, what will happen, scared of death even. And here we are now tonight, we're talking back on the same subject again. And I like what Bernie had to say there, because, maybe that last final thought is what we take with us. And, the last thing we want then is to be fearful of what lies beyond, and just take that peace, that happiness with us.
And that was Billy Joel's struggle. If we go back to the song.
There you go, Jimmy.
And Billy Joel, he talks about the jungle of doubt and the river so deep, and he's searching for something so undefined that can only be seen by the eyes of the blind. And he's afraid to walk to the other side of the river. And I crossed that river mentally, psychologically. And I've gone past the point of Billy Joel. And even though I'm not on the other shore, I can wave to Billy and say, "Hey, Billy, this is where you can be." And you don't have to be a spiritual man to be there. It's about where do you want to, what is your final thought in the very end? So it brings us to you, Jimmy. What's your thought going to be in the very end?
Well, I would think that my thought would be the one that I had when I was going through my particular internal battles, and that was that when I got to the other side of that abyss, when I crawled out of that dark, craggy, scraggy place, that cold, freezing winds, and I got to the other side, and I walked down that mountain that we were talking about at the beginning of the show. When I came down the mountain, I came into a valley, and it was a lush, green valley. There was people there. They were all doing whatever they were doing. They would greet me, notice me, smile at me, and send me good energy. And that's the valley that I'm going to spend the rest of my time in. And
that's your eternity, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm liking this actual thought. I never thought.
Well, we're not liking, we're not loving. We're talking about. We're asking you the question. What does your thought mean in the very end? Yeah.
That's where I want to be for eternity.
Yeah, because that is whatever. So whatever your thought is, what is in that very end? If you believe it's going to be Jesus, or you believe it's going to be Muhammad, or whatever, or if you believe it's his family, or walk into the valley with loving people, that's what you stick to. Don't waver. Take that into the end, because that will become your eternity.
I've never thought about it this way before, Bernie. This is really given me a lot to think about. It's definitely a new way of looking at things, isn't it, Jimmy? I mean, we've always kind of, where are we going? We've never really kind of spoke about it this way, though, have we?
No, and I think maybe internally, when you're judging, you're judging yourself at that moment in time, that intense moment that happens, and you don't think you were a good person, and you think that what you did in life is going to force you to go burn in the flames of hell. Then I think maybe you may end up in the flames of hell in that moment, because I think what we're talking about here is preparing yourself to enter and creating the reality of the place that you want to end up in, not in some Dante's Inferno that's not even really in the Bible. It's just been sort of assimilated into that.
It's a good point. It really is,
It's somebody else's hell, not mine.
That's right. Exactly. Great one.
So we've talked about these archetypes and where we've come from, where we're going, and what we individually project into the cosmos and beyond ourselves. I'll tell you a story. it was about 10 years ago. I was on an airplane, and I was not doing this. Actually, maybe it was 15 years ago. And I was doing the biological clock stuff. And there was a guy next to me who was a shamanic practitioner. And I believe he was some sort of like Reiki leader or something. And he told me this. He told me about shamans all around the world have these dreams of the cosmic mountain, and the same dreams that Billy Joel had. But what's different about these shamanic practitioners, these shamanic leaders, is that they were recording their dreams, and they were creating a map to that cosmic mountain, that original cosmic mountain from which all our individual cosmic mountains come from. So what is the first cosmic mountain? And we've talked about these archetypes, but we never actually talked about what was the first cosmic mountain. Now, this person at that time, they hadn't figured it out yet, but there was a search and there was a belief that there was such a cosmic mountain from which this man first transcended into the cosmos. And I believe I found that cosmic mountain in my work. And on the next show, maybe that's something we can talk about.
Sorry, I was muted up there. Absolutely. And, we are going to be doing a lot more shows together, and that's something I'm happy about, something Jimmy's happy about, and I'm sure everyone out there will be happy about as well. This has been so thought-provoking tonight. It really, really has. And the listeners to KBS will know that this is not usually my kind of source material at all. But like I said to you, Bernie, that's no bad thing, because we have to kind of spread our wings, and it's good to look at other stuff as well. Wouldn't you agree, Jimmy?
I would. And I think, the every foot that you go up that mountain and turn around and look behind you, your perception changes. And, when your perception changes, everything changes. As far as spiritual attainment, it seems that even just our lives as human beings are metaphors for these mountainous experiences that you see, these battles that have to take place. If we came here and everything was perfect all the time, everything was good, we didn't have adversity, we didn't have to try to cross that river or climb that mountain, we would be, sitting here I think we'd be bored. I think the whole reason for adversity is to build and instill the qualities of that hero that you were talking about, or that power animal. To instill those qualities in ourselves that don't necessarily reside, or that we don't feel that we have within us, that we can lean and perceive through the powers that these animals may have or possess, and use those to sort of get us over our weak spots and help us power through some of what's going on in our lives.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot to be gained personally from, this information we've covered tonight, Bernie, and I'm sure Dr. Keating told you that I'm very kind of nuts and bolts scientific like himself. So that this has been really, really kind of new, really refreshing for me. And I can't thank you enough for coming on and taking me down these roads that I'm not really too used to.
Or you've gone down the rabbit. You both have gone down the rabbit hole today.
We've got into the bottom of the cave.
Exactly, and you can never come out.
No,
you can never come out the same person. For the rest, you're going to talk throughout your lives with religious people or non-religious atheists, and you're going to have these conversations about what comes after. And you've walked away today with a different way of seeing what that will be.
Absolutely, a far different way, and a refreshing look really at what may lie beyond on the other side.
Maybe we can finish up with a little Billy Joel.
Jimmy, have you still got him queued up? I'll let the audience know that Bernie, in preparation for tonight's show, Bernie was hoping I would sing that song, and I was having to tell him, that the thousands of people listening around the world, we would have been down to maybe 3 people listening if I was ever to try and sing on air. Jimmy, what do you think, man? And you can't even know because you'll never hear me singing. It just doesn't happen, dude.
What would I say to somebody?
It's funny. I would see you singing maybe some Christmas songs or something over there.
I like my Christmas songs, absolutely. But you were mentioning something to me.
So the River of Dreams, can we do that one?
Back to it. I'm ready. So anytime you guys are ready, we still
play it now, man. Play it now. Let's have a bit of Billy.
All right, here we go.
I always loved that song, but now it's given me a totally different way of looking at it, and it's increased my love of that song because now I really know what Billy Joel was kind of getting at. And Bernie, without you bringing this to the table tonight, I would never have appreciated that. It's opened up a whole new level of understanding to me when it comes to that song alone, and a lot of the stuff we've spoke about tonight, dreams, archetypes, where we've come from and where we're going. And just briefly before we leave tonight, you were saying to me about where you come from personally. And it's not exactly a million miles from where I am tonight, right? Because you've got a lot of good Scottish blood in you, man.
Yeah, so I looked it up. My family name, the Scottish, is Ferris, which I looked up as Fergus. We came over in 1684. And we go back to some distant relation, marriage into the royal family. I'm not sure if that's a good thing with the Kev Baker Show.
If it's a Scottish royal family, then that might be good.
If this guy,
not down in Buckingham, not too absolutely. But no, I can't thank you enough for tonight. And like I say, we're going to get you back on next month as well. I know Jimmy, he's going to be counting down the days until that show, that's for sure. But there's so much more that we can talk about, so much more that we can get into. And obviously, this has been a real treat for all of us tonight, both myself, Jimmy, and the audience out there. And we can't thank you enough for your time, Bernie, and everything that you've brought to the table tonight. So it's been brilliant, absolutely genius.
We'll do it again. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely.
In the middle of the night.
In the middle of the night. Yes, I'll like that. And Jimmy, I'm sure you want to thank Bernie as well, because I know that you've really, really bought into this one. You've really kind of resonated with this one. Sorry, that's more than what I meant to say there.
I totally did, and I just, I can't wait until you come back, and I'm looking forward to it already. I'm already making notes of stuff I want to run across your table over there and see what you think.
Absolutely. So then, with that said, let me remind everyone, big night again. Another big show tomorrow night. The big shows just keep on coming, folks. Hour number 2, Gerald Celente will be on the broadcast, and he'll be taking us through his thoughts on the trends for the year ahead. And of course, Gerald is the man behind thetrendsjournal.com. I'll be back same time, same place tomorrow, right here on the only network that counts, Truth Frequency Radio. So wherever you are, make it TFR. And in Whistle's absence, may I say, Denny, touch that dial. Good night and God bless.